Mortal Shell is out now, and boy is it challenging, which isn't really new for this genre, and Mortal Shell adds its own spin on a lot of the pre-existing staples for the genre, so let's get through 20 beginner tips and tricks to get you through the first few hours. Exploration tips. You have probably figured this out already, but you are supposed to lose to Hard-Earn in that first tutorial fight. If you do beat him, you do get an item which will help you level up in the early stages, but it's not a big deal and it's not worth stressing over it. The first thing you should do when the game opens up is head to the Fulcrum Tower. I know you really want to explore and there are plenty of ways that you can go, but the very first thing you should do is head here. This will become your base of operations for the foreseeable future. You can change your shell here and upgrade your weapons. There is also a vendor, and a little side note is to make sure that you explore the whole tower. It took me probably too long to figure this out, but you can actually go up the stairs and it is well worth doing, as there is an old prisoner up here and he will give you an item that will teach you how to parry, which is very important to have, and I'm kind of ashamed of how long it took me to realize that there is stairs right there. Moving on, you've probably noticed that for every item you pick up, there is a familiarity. What you should do with every item that you do pick up is at least use it once so you know what the item does, and for items that you use regularly, familiarizing yourself with those items will gain additional effects. The main healing item, Well Cap, will mean it heals faster, and the poison mushroom that you find early on, well, initially it will poison you, but if you familiarize yourself with the mushroom, it will actually make you immune to poison for a short period of time, which is really beneficial for one of the mini bosses that you come across when you find the teal shell. The best way to find out what an item does is honestly just to consume it and see what it does. But the general rule is that any food item will heal you to some degree or increase your stamina regen. The effigies that you can get will allow you to switch between your shelves while away from the Fulcrum Tower. And there are sword fragments which allow you to do a similar thing. The bonfires in this game is Cessna Janessa, the lady that you meet underneath Fulcrum Tower. She is where you can go to heal and perform any upgrades that you need. The difference with Mortal Shell, however, is that there is no rechargeable guard or flask that will allow you to heal when you travel back out into the world. What you should be looking for is the World Cap mushrooms that you can find throughout the world. This is the main healing item, and they will always spawn at the same location on a certain timer. So as you pick one up, you'll see that the icon to pick it up will change to like a refresh timer. You'll have to wait for that to refresh before you can pick up another one. It is well worth memorizing where these locations are, so that when you come across a boss or a more difficult area, you can just run around the map, collect all the ones that you need, and then go take on that area. It is also safe to run around the map at your leisure. Enemies won't follow you outside of their designated areas, so feel free to just charge on back to wherever you last died, or to pick up the mushrooms like I have been doing. It is well worth just charging past enemies if you don't want to take them on. This can also help you familiarize yourself with the world. The world is very interconnected. Initially, it looks like there are so many paths, but what you will realize is that there is only 3 or 4 different ways you can actually go, and the rest are just interconnected pathways to the other paths. The last exploration tip is don't worry about the locked chests that you will find. You won't need to worry about these until later in the game, and it is very clear once you can open them. So just leave them be, come back to them later, at least memorize where they are if you really want to catch them all, but there isn't anything desperately that you need in most of these. Upgrade tips. The main upgrade path in Mortal Shell are the shells themselves. Each shell has its own stats, including HP and stamina, and they also have their own special abilities. Familiarizing yourself with your favorite shell is a good idea to do. Tar and Glimpses are your main 2 currencies. Tar is like your Souls-like currency that you will drop when you die, and it is used to buy items and upgrades for your shells. Glimpses are shell specific and are not lost on your death. However, as you use a shell and kill bosses, you will earn glimpses for that shell, which you then can use for the upgrades. Make sure that you are using the shell you plan on upgrading most to maximize your glimpse potential. Once you have reached Fulcrum Tower, the first thing you should be doing is using your instinct on the coffins to go locate the shells. It should be your first main objective. They are not too hard to find, but they do have mini bosses or other various things in your way. A very easy one to get is the one that is past Kresna, which is right near the Fulcrum Tower. You can just run straight past this boss, break down the wood, and there is a little poison enemy in here which is pretty easy to dispose of, and you get yourself a free shell early on. Once you do get a shell, you should bring it back to Cessna as soon as possible so that you can learn its name and what its various special abilities are to decide if it's a shell that you want to invest your time into. You'll notice that the coffin for this shell or another shell that you've picked up will have changed into the shell itself, and you can click on the shell to be able to switch back into a previous shell. You can also do this via the effigies, which are a limited use item that you can get throughout the world. You'll also find various items to upgrade your weapons as you explore. A key one that you can get early on again is actually by defeating Greshma, which is a difficult fight, and I would suggest to explore a bit and level up a shell before giving him or her a fair shot. I can't tell you how many times I tried to take them down and I accidentally run into the traps which are at the entrance, and the amount of frustration that I was feeling was huge. It was a much better idea to come back once I had learned some new skills and could beat him pretty comfortably.
I've kept your flesh safe, family.
Yes, thank you, Cessna. To do beat this little boss, you will get an item that will allow you to upgrade your hallowed sword with a mechanical spike, which is as an additional ability that you can use with your resolve. Combat tips. A little side note that isn't necessarily a combat tip is that your HUD is actually really small and it is really hard to see your resolve. For me anyway, sitting in front of my monitor, I'm playing on PC and I actually increased my HUD to the large size, which you can do in the settings just to make it much easier to see how much health I had, how much stamina, and how much resolve. And I didn't realize until probably after too long again that you do have little resolve icons above your health bar. What you can do with resolve is you can use this to do various abilities like kicking or the mechanical spike like I mentioned before. Resolve will generate on its own as you fight enemies. Another thing that you can do is parry, which I mentioned earlier. You can get the item to allow you to parry from the old prisoner at the tower. Once you have learned how to parry, I would recommend to practice this on some of the lower level enemies near the tower before taking this newfound ability into boss fights. There is a bit of skill into timing your parries correctly and making sure that it is one, charged, and two, that you can actually land it. If you do get an enhanced repost, which is a well-timed parry with resolve, you will be able to heal yourself as well, so it is well worth trying this if you are low on health, but it is a risk-reward kind of system. Dodge also has frames of invincibility, so use it often. Be careful when rolling, however. Rolling doesn't have these frames of invincibility, and you can definitely get hit mid-roll. If you do need to sidestep, make sure you're dodging and only using roll if you're trying to create distance with the enemy in order to heal or you're trying to get away from them for some reason. Hardening is the main nuance mechanic in Mortal Shell, and you should familiarize yourself with this ability as soon as possible. You can harden indefinitely until you take damage, and some of these shells will allow you to upgrade your harden in various ways, whether it be cooldown or taking extra hits, what have you. You can also harden during any animation, and your stamina will also recover while you're hardened if you wait long enough. So if you've used all your stamina rolling and the enemy is still attacking, you can quickly harden to save yourself from the damage. Hopefully they won't attack you straight away and it'll give your stamina time to regenerate. You can also harden offensively, which I've been doing a lot. You can queue up an attack, then harden, and once they hit you, it'll release the attack. You can also do this mid-combo, so you can attack, then harden, and then once they swing at you, you can go back to attacking. I've also noticed that if your harden is broken by an attack and another attack quickly follows, you will often not take damage from that attack either. It depends how quickly it is timed, so I wouldn't recommend actually doing this as a strategy. It's just well worth noting that if an enemy has a quick 1-2 combo, you could probably take both of those with the single harden. Harden also has a short cooldown and certain abilities can make it shorter, but you should be using this as often as possible. In every single fight, you should be hardening as much as you can. This is an ability you're supposed to spam whenever it's available. It's not something you're supposed to use periodically, like kicking or reposting, for example. The last combat tip is really just to take your time and be patient in combat. Mortal Shell is much more slower paced than some of the other Soulsborne games that have been released recently. Patience is rewarded here over aggression in most cases. Learn the enemy's movements, make sure you dodge them, and then take it out. There isn't a typical block, so your best option is to dodge the attacks or harden if you have it available, and then attack the enemy and hopefully take it out and not take much damage. Most of the low-level enemies you'll come across around Fulcrum are the same types. They're these same one-handers or these pike guys. You can take them out pretty comfortably once you've learned their mechanics, but it is well worth learning enemy mechanics rather than trying to run headfirst into every situation. Add any of your own tips down in the comments below so that we can all learn together. I'll have more content coming out for Mortal Shell in the next coming days, so keep an eye out for that. You can also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and on Twitch, where I stream 3 days a week, Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, Australian night times. We'll be streaming some Mortal Shell over the next coming days, so keep an eye out for that. Thank you for watching this video. My name is NorZZa, and I hope you have a great day.